Welcome back to Ripe Avocados, episode 20. Today we've got another small release film, the first Stephen King film also on our playlist. It's Salem's Lot, and I guess I'm fired up about this one too. We're probably going to have a lot to say, so let's get into it.
Daydream, I fell asleep amid the flowers for a couple of hours on a beautiful day. Daydream.
So Salem's Lot takes place in a little town, Salem's Lot. It's deep in Maine, in the middle of the woods, and the main character, Ben Mears, he's coming back to town to Salem's Lot. It's a place he grew up, and basically just a lot of weird shit is popping off ever since this European guy, I believe his name is Straker.
It's Euron Greyjoy.
Yeah, exactly. He moves into town and purchases the haunted house up on the hill, and no one seems to be concerned with this whatsoever. And basically this dumb group of people band together to fight vampires because, again, that Straker guy has reincarnated Barlow, this ancient vampire beast that is wreaking havoc on the town and taking all the children and turning people into vampires. And again, this little group of survivors, if you want to call them, basically, it's Ben Mears, his love interest, Susie, a math teacher. I believe he's a math teacher, or English teacher, in a disgusting Boston Red Sox jacket.
Like the worst throwback logo.
And Dr. Cody are all, and of course, we can't forget, what's that kid's name? Is it Max?
Mark
Petrie. That kid is a fucking badass. But basically, they band together to try to fight the vampires and rid them of existence in Salem's Lot. And only two come out in the end. And we'll let you watch the movie to figure out which two.
Yeah, and you kind of started off a good point there. Only two come out in the end, but I just didn't give a shit about any of them except for Mark. Mark was like the saving grace of this entire movie, I thought.
Yeah.
If he wasn't in this movie, oh my god, this would have probably had...
All my scores are boosted because of Mark.
Yeah, mine as well. So my character's score was a 5.5, and
wow.
Mark probably accounts for 5.4 of that. Do you
want me to give my...
Yeah.
My character score is 5.4, and I'm not joking. It's that high because of Mark.
Yeah.
Mark was literally the best character in this movie by far.
Yeah, well, let's just touch on him first. So he basically takes this... He takes like an oath to his boys after we see him just get... I don't even know what the fuck was happening in that schoolyard scene. He just had his hands...
That was straight racism. That little kid walked up and just punched the shit out of the one black kid on the playground. It's like,
right.
What?
But also before that, he just had his hands tied up for... I don't know why. His hands were in rope.
More racism. No.
Yeah.
He was like a Houdini fanatic. So like he wanted to show himself like escaping. That's actually why I will say literally Mark's character was the best thing, because he was just a badass, but all the things he did kind of made sense at the same time too. Like, remember, he was a Houdini fanatic, so when he's tied up, hanging upside down in Straker's house, he's able to like free himself and then bash his head in. Dude, Mark went on a fucking Call of Duty killing spree this movie.
Yeah, he had like a 10 kill to death ratio. Well, actually, it was infinite because he doesn't die.
Yeah.
So he literally takes an oath to Danny after Well, I don't know.
Homelander's son.
I mean, it's not a hot take to say Stephen King's a perverted human being, but his infatuation with just having kids get fucking obliterated in like the first 10 minutes of his movies it's so eerie. And he basically vows to avenge Danny, who's played, I should know his actor off the top of my head. He's Homelander's
son. Yeah.
Yeah, he's also in Big Little Lies. That's where I first saw him. That kid's a good actor though, and I thought it was kind of a waste to put him in that demonic vampire role, because I don't think Leonardo DiCaprio could play the cheesy looking vampire well in this movie. It was so stupid to me how over the top these vampires looked. In my opinion, I don't know. Like, I get the yellow eyes and everything, but at least I don't know, man. We probably have both not read Salem's Lot or seen the original. I haven't. I'm just speaking for you. So I don't know how these vampires are supposed to be depicted, but at least in this movie, they just weren't scary at all. They were just really dumb looking, and after they get possessed, it just didn't really do it for me in terms of a thrill factor or whatnot. So like I mentioned, Mark just does his best to really hold it down. I had a real issue with Ben Mears and Susan. Like, these were two of the blandest characters I've seen in recent memory that are supposed to lead the whole charge here. Like, Mark is not the main character of this movie. He might be a bigger character in the book. Like I mentioned, I haven't read it, but Ben Mears is like the main protagonist. He is the main protagonist from what it seems. Yeah. And either this dude just can't act, or he is just not good at showing emotion. It just seemed like there was no connection whatsoever between him and Susan other than the lines they were supposed to read. I don't know if you picked up on that as well, but
it was definitely a little wonky. It kind of gave off like Goosebumps vibes. Like the Goosebumps TV show. This was just like a movie version of that show. Like, and honestly, like, I get it. It's a Stephen King novel, so it probably has that kind of theme throughout. But like you said, when I was watching it, I was like, first of all, of course, Ben Mears runs into the one attractive lady in town.
Of course, he's a writer too.
Yeah, and of course, she's reading his book. Like, that was kind of a funny scene. I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of rooting for Ben and Susie to ride off into the sunset together with their adopted child Mark, but
I didn't really care about Ben or Susan, to be honest. Maybe I'm just a super pessimist, but I didn't think they did it for me.
I don't know. I was kind of hoping, like, because he couldn't kill her. Like, he was struggling to kill her until he finally does in the end. But I thought if they had killed Barlow before killing her, she might turn back. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe they can have some sort of sweet little ending here. But also, like, I don't know. The FBI would be tapped into this within seconds. Like,
yeah, it was just really...
Where's this famous writer that traveled to Salem's Lot and now everyone here is dead except for that writer and a small black child?
Right, and we get 1985, one writer goes missing and we have fucking helicopters searching for him in the barren wastelands of Colorado and shit. So, I don't know. The characters I just thought were super bland, and that's why I'm right around average here. But it was pretty dope how Mark just sees Danny possessed in his room, like trying to hypnotize him, snaps out of it, immediately like Star Wars the forces him out of his room with a cross, and then it's like I will like I don't remember exactly what the vernacular is word for word, but he just vows.
He basically is like, he's like, I'll save you, Danny.
Yeah, like no fear whatsoever. He's not scared of the bullies, and he has less fear than any of the adults in this movie. Yeah. So he does his own. But
he instantly starts doing research on how to repel vampires and kill them. Yeah. And then he's just like, I need to kill Barlow.
Yeah, like where are his parents? And then we do see his parents, and they're just again,
Your
some of the most
typical horror movie parents.
yeah, all of the characters in the movie are typical horror movie characters for the most part. They're really dumb. They seemingly only try to attack the vampires when it's closing in on sunset, and they just don't really communicate well with one another. They split up all the time, even though it's talked about how they shouldn't do that. I mean, the two dumbest characters are the guys that do this minimum wage job for Euron Greyjoy in the first 5 minutes of the movie. Like, I would have not even agreed to this. I think Mike was one of the guys helping him. Wasn't Mike the dude helping him in the beginning? It might have just been another villain.
I think it was literally just like two random guys
who never reappear in the movie, which was really odd to me that they got all this screen time, but whatever. I feel as though, and I've read a little bit about this online, that the show, or this was a show back in the 70s, like a miniseries, and it just seemed like there were a lot of things that they didn't go into full explanation about that we'll talk about later. But
dude,
the characters
my biggest problem was everyone in the everyone was so dumb in this movie besides Mark.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone in town, when the first kid goes missing, is like, oh, it's got to be this writer that came in. It's got to be this famous writer that came in from New York but lived here when he was like 9 years old. Not the creepy European guy that just opened shop and moved into the haunted house up on the hill.
Yeah.
It's like,
and
hello?
I will add that this guy who, I don't actually know the actor's name, but the dude who plays Euron Greyjoy, he's a good villain. He's a good villain in Game of Thrones, and he's just, he's really fucking creepy, bro. But he's not really on screen that often, and I didn't think the character itself was anything special. He was just your typical servant to an evil power. But I think we've seen a few times. I mean, Lord
with
of the
the
Rings
sickest mustache ever.
Yeah.
I'm trying to emulate him right now.
Yeah, his eyebrows were fucking crazy.
Yeah.
But I think that probably covers characters for the most part. I gave cinematography a 4.4. The cinematography for me, I didn't really think was great as well. Not really anything of this.
I actually kind of fuck with the cinematography. I thought some of the shots were very cool.
There were. So the one shot I wrote down that was unbelievably good, that I don't think I've ever really seen done in a movie, which is weird, was when Richie gets taken.
Yep. When I literally have that written down.
Bro, what a scene that was. Holy shit. We should put this in a clip if we can not get copyright infringement for it, but the way I think it's a 2D angle of it pretty much. Yeah. It's just the silhouette of Danny and Richie, you know, I'm just recanting what happened. You know what happens. They encounter Euron Greyjoy, who's just the creepiest fucking guy ever, trying to lure him into his van for a ride or his car. And they're walking one by one, and I was looking all the way to the right side of the screen, expecting Euron Greyjoy's silhouette to come, and then they just snap the camera and zoom in, and he's right behind Richie, like, so creepy, and then snatches him, gets away. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous that Danny couldn't see him, like, lugging him off to the car or whatever, because he kind of knows, but he's also a kid, so.
I mean, Danny should have laser beamed the shit out of him the second he approached in the car. Danny should have flipped the car, threw it like 50 miles. Like, what's Homelander's son really doing? Come on.
Yeah, I agree. But that scene was very, very good. And I didn't really get why Euron Greyjoy was, like, looking at them through a hole in his cloth. Like, that didn't make any sense. I get that Richie could see Barlow through this hole, but that was just another thing that was never really explained. But that scene alone was really good. They used a lot of, like, mist and, I guess, smoke machines to try and make the vampires
They were just hotboxing the set.
I just didn't think that the scare scenes were really creepy at all. And I think it really goes into the costume design and whatnot. I just thought the vampires weren't scary. And
Barlow
that's why I didn't really like it.
Yeah, Barlow was just like Nosferatu or like Pitbull, like on severe extreme Ozempic. It's
He
just
kind
like,
of looked. He kind of looked like that dude in Alien Romulus in the end, but
yeah,
clearly
yeah.
just so much CGI that it wasn't scary.
I will say another
Yeah.
cool shot was Richie being dragged into the house, and he's got the hood on, but he just sees through the peephole, so it's like Barlow slowly like coming down the steps, and he's seeing just like little glimpses of him. I'd say that's the scariest
Yeah.
Barlow looked. When Barlow's actually on screen, it's just like you said, so over the top. The CGI is so bad. It's like he looks stupid. Like that's not scary.
Yeah.
Um,
It's one more shout out
yeah,
just to that silhouette scene. That will never get talked about because this movie is so bland and below average, but that scene was very, very incredible. I wish that other directors will take pieces of that and incorporate that into like bigger motion pictures because it's so effective. That shit freaked me
yeah.
out.
It was
But
literally like, it was something straight out of like a Broadway play or something. Like the way the
yeah,
silhouettes just looked on screen with the beautiful sky in the background, and you just see these silhouettes of the two kids walking, and then of course you're just waiting for something to happen, and that Theon Greyjoy, man.
yeah, and they actually did in the very first couple scenes of the movie. They had this cool little thing. I actually said out loud, "Oh, that's kind of cool." When they had the split down the middle of the camera lens, and they were showing like two different scenes. It kind of actually reminded me of Dark, but they used this for maybe 5 minutes. Not, I don't even know if it was that long, and then just completely abandoned it and turned it into a shitty small production movie that we understand why it did not get released to theaters and it was hushed under the rug and whatnot. So, what did you give for cinematography? I don't
Oh,
know
I
if you
didn't
give your
even give
score.
my score yet. Cinematography, I gave it 7.5. I thought the shots were pretty cool.
Okay.
I thought like the lighting throughout the whole movie was really cool. A lot of like reds and blues and like just like like in even in the opening scene when the two dumbasses are transporting Barlow's giant coffin into Straker's basement, the way they walk down the cellar door, but the brake lights were the only lights coming through, and it
Yeah.
was just straight red. That was pretty fucking sick.
Yeah, that was cool.
So
That was
I
cool.
definitely enjoyed the cinematography in this. It was, besides Mark, the best part of the movie for me.
Maybe I'm being too hard on it, but I just couldn't get past the fact that it wasn't really scary, and that was what they were definitely trying to do was freak you out. Maybe it was just overly over CGI'd, but a lot of people do that nowadays. So the writing for me, I also didn't think was great. I gave it a 6.2 here. I don't know if you're higher than that.
Writing was a 5.5 for me. I was,
Okay.
like I said, this movie was kind of all over the place, and just some of like the choices some of the characters make, just so stupid. Like when Susie gets bit and Ben like takes her to the church, and she's like all the crosses are glowing, and she's like having an exorcism on the ground, and he's like, "No, we can save her," and she like pushes him off and like sprints out of there, and he's running after her. My only thought was like, dude, pussy will make you do the craziest things. Like what
Yeah,
is
he
he
had
thinking?
sex with her like one time.
Yeah,
That just goes back to that whole tandem. I never really thought it had any sort of chemistry on camera, so it just didn't matter to me. And none of these characters ever gave a shit when the other one got bitten.
no.
And also, how the fuck does I think she was a cop, the woman who gets bit. I don't even have her name on here.
Oh, the
offhand.
Dr.
She gets
Cody.
bit and uses. Yeah, she uses the rabies shot, and that just supposedly heals her, but then refuses to use it
Susie,
on
yeah.
Susan. I guess Susan was turned at that point, but there were so many plot holes
Yeah,
in this
but
movie
like
that made like no
no,
sense.
100%. And that's the thing. It's like I don't know why they're acting like they know all the facts about vampires. Like Dr. Cody took a shot in the dark by injecting herself with rabies or a rabies vaccine, and and it just happened to work. Like, why can't it work if Susie is like spazzing out on the ground? Like, just give it a shot. Who the fuck cares?
I didn't get that
I
at all.
mean,
Also, how
sorry, I just had to go since we were talking about Dr. Cody. The way she gets her head blasted in or whatever, or her chest blasted in by Susie's
yeah.
mom was crazy.
Yeah, that whole thing wasn't ever explained either. We just had Euron Greyjoy and Susie's mom were just inherently evil people, I
This
guess.
was just Longlegs, the sequel, but with Barlow.
Yeah, yeah, and the ending was probably like the same,
Yeah,
honestly. Like they both, I thought they were both kind of like the ending with this movie was fine. I thought it was kind of entertaining. Like we'll get into that in a second, but there's just a lot of other plot holes we got to
yeah,
discuss. So you mentioned how Straker just waltzes into town in like the most evil looking manner. Like everything about this
yeah.
guy is evil, and no one bats an eye. He, the whole church split up scene at the end was the dumbest shit ever. Like let's meet at the church in 30
Yeah.
minutes. All but two characters make it there, and Mark trying to convince his idiotic parents to not do any of the things he's telling them about. If my kid is telling me things that are that ridiculous, I'd probably not just go like walk outside in the middle of the dark when some random person's knocking on my door at seemingly like
Yeah.
midnight or whatever.
Well, especially if my kid is
It's
there
just
with the head priest of the town. I'd be like,
right,
what is going on? Like, let me at least call someone.
yeah. Yeah, either we got a spotlight situation here, or there's a fucking vampire
Yeah.
on my doorstep, and it turned out to be B. Um, and yeah, man, there were just so many dumb parts of this. What happened with the whole blood spurting thing too? They made a big deal about how Danny didn't have blood, and he just drinks his own blood and basically kills himself. But then Mark stabs a bunch of vampires in his treehouse at the end, which I don't know how the vampires don't get into his treehouse. That was just never explained. But I'll give it a pass
Yeah.
because it's Mark.
I mean, I guess they go off the whole idea that like vampires have to be invited into the house. Like that's the whole lore around vampires. Because like if they don't get invited in, they can't attack you. And they can't just like barge right in. It's why, yeah. So it's why like Mike is able to get back into the math teacher's house because he was invited in the first place, and
Okay.
he attacks him there. But I mean,
Okay.
granted,
I
yeah,
guess.
the movie still fucking blew.
I guess. The characters just dying, not meaning anything, really just took a lot out of it, in my opinion. Also, it was just never fully explained, and this goes back to this show or this movie probably would have been better as a show. The whole town just seemingly gets infected, and we don't realize it until the last 10-15 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
But I didn't even give a shit because all the characters were like ass except for what our boy Mark. So it was just really, really dry. I thought this whole movie just lacked any bit of spark, and there was a few things that were saving grace of it, but for the most part it was just really mid the whole
Yeah.
time.
I just thought it was just dumb decision after dumb decision, and I get it. It's a horror movie. Like, you have to have characters making dumb decisions to get the story moving forward and to build up the suspense. But,
You don't have to.
I mean, if you want
Yeah.
to make it more than like a 15-minute movie, at points you do, but it was, again, it was just dumb decision after dumb decision. It's like no one was making a smart decision besides Mark. Like, there's literally a line
Yeah.
in the movie where they are talking about the fact that they are about to go investigate vampires, and Dr. Cody is like, all right, we'll wait till dark and then we'll go. It's like, what? Are you
Yeah.
fucking kidding me?
But to counter your point, a recent movie we talked about, Blink Twice, that whole plot is set up in a very, very, I think, realistic manner.
Yeah.
To where people with less money are invited on a private island to go
By a
party,
well-known
and they
billionaire.
agree to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, they're gonna take your phone, but you get to party all week. We've heard of stuff like
Oh,
this. I think Drake has parties and just doesn't let people use their phones and
Yeah.
whatnot because he doesn't want to get filmed doing shit. But
The freak
that
offs.
to me is kind of yeah, that's a believable thing to me because obviously it's real, but Blink Twice isn't a real movie or whatever, but I believe that whole scenario. It's just way harder for me to believe the actions of these characters. Honestly, the kids are the smartest ones. Danny sees Euron Greyjoy like checking him out, and he's like, "What the
Yeah.
fuck? I had to get away from that weird man."
Although Richie
And they walk away
Richie
from him.
was a little dumb. Richie looked like he was a little out of breath and was considering hopping in the car because he didn't want to walk anymore.
Right, but he's a kid,
Yeah.
so that's also not that. That's yeah. I don't know, man. It's going back to it. Stephen King is just a fucked up person. He just always has kids just getting killed in like the most fucked up ways over and over. But he's very successful at what he does, and I overall I just didn't really think that this movie was a great Stephen King story, and I've seen it ranked very highly in regards to his overall pieces of writing, but for whatever reason maybe just because of the lore of vampires we've seen in movies and whatnot, like Twilight and True Blood and some of these more campy versions of it, I don't really get freaked out by vampires, especially when they have beating yellow eyes and a cross can just make them get fucking teleported across the entire bane of this town. It just seemed so ridiculous to me that it wasn't ever thrilling in any manner.
That's another thing I never understood about like vampire movies or zombie movies in general. Sometimes it's like how do they choose who gets turned versus who just gets ripped to shreds? Like
Yeah.
the math teacher Matt, he got brutally murdered. You just like heard his like body crumbling versus like the other people like Mike who just gets bitten and then turned into a vampire. It's like, I don't know, maybe some are just like maybe they take him by surprise and they're able to bite him and infect him, but at the same time it's like, why not just do that to everyone?
I have a much better understanding of how zombies work. It just seems as though if you get bit by a zombie, you're dead, unless you get bit in like the hand and cut off your arm before it gets into your whole body or something.
Dude, the best
along
the
those
best
lines.
zombie movie to me was World War Z. Like that made the most because it was an actual virus. So like that one.
Yeah, that one's
yeah.
good.
It-
I really do like The Last of Us, to be honest.
Oh,
but
Last
it's
of
not this. They're not technically zombies. I know they're like a little different, but I think those are way cooler.
Yeah, Last of Us is really good too because it's like an airborne virus, or it's through the spores or whatever. So it's like that one.
Yeah.
That one's really good. There's like a science behind it. I love it when.
I'm also. Oh, finish.
No,
your
I
thought.
was just gonna say I like it when there's like a little bit of backstory to make the zombies, the walkers, the whatever make sense in the story, versus like a Dawn of the Dead kind of thing where it's like there's just zombies fucking running around everywhere causing havoc. A great and fun movie, but like I like when there's a little bit of like science and backstory to it.
I also want to go against your World War Z thing. I think Zombieland is the best zombie movie.
Zombieland?
I love the original Zombieland, and I know it's a comedy, but I think that's just a very simple.
Bro, Shaun of the
zombie
Dead is
movie.
the best zombie movie.
Is that Simon
Yeah.
Pegg? Yeah, he's good. And then the one with Danny McBride, isn't that also a zombie movie, or is that just an alien movie with Jonah Hill?
It's like the neighborhood
This Is the
watch.
End.
I'm
I'm thinking of This Is the End.
okay, with the like apocalypse happening.
Yeah, there's not zombies. All those movies are kind of the same to me.
Somebody like Satan
they're
and the
very
demons.
similar. Okay, when Michael Cera gets
Yeah.
destroyed in front of everybody,
Yeah.
he's like, "Where's my fucking cell phone?" It's a great scene. But yeah, so that's our writing summary right there. We're talking about zombies now. So entertainment, I gave it a 4.0. I just think this movie didn't have much of anything to me. Like I mentioned, a lot of it was just all mid. Like Mark, we're gonna go on a huge Mark rant for this entire podcast, I guess. But he was the one thing I guess I thought was pretty cool. His character had a little bit of development, but even the ending of this thing was fine, but it just didn't do it for me. I understand why it never got released to theaters. This movie was just really, really average. It's not complete ass. I thought I was like parts of it were a little entertaining when they were going on this killing spree at the end. He drives over the drive-in theater sign, and all of them, all the zombies or all the vampires burn simultaneously. But I just couldn't really get into this movie. I didn't really think it was that great.
Entertainment for me, actually, fairly high score. I gave it a 6.5. So
Okay.
a little bit better than average. It's definitely worth shitting on this movie, but for me, I mean, it's almost Halloween. It's a Halloween movie. It gave me the Goosebumps vibes. There's not a ton of humor in it, but it definitely has some comedic undertones, and there's jokes here and there, and they don't necessarily land, but it makes it kind of like a fun-hearted movie at the same time as a horror. And Mark is really the saving grace of this. Like, the whole movie, you're just kind of like rooting for Mark. I don't really give a shit about Ben Sears the whole time.
Right. Right. He's such a stereotypical random character in a bad movie. You just don't give a shit about.
But like the fact that I was like rooting for Mark the whole time is why I gave it a 6.5. Like, if you want to put a movie on in the background that's Halloween themed and you can just like enjoy it as background noise, this is a fine movie to watch. But if you're looking for a serious like horror thriller or a movie that goes into the lore about vampires, this is probably not up your alley. Again, it's just fun background. Also,
it's just not that scary.
Yeah, no.
I've said this a bunch of times. It's really not that scary. I think it's TVMA too, but they just do not do a whole lot in that aspect.
I mean,
I don't know, man.
Ben does shove a stake down or through the back of Barlow's head, like right in front of Mark. But dude, Mark needs therapy for the next 50 years of his life. Like, that man killed, no bullshit. He killed a real person. He killed Straker by like slamming him in the face with an iron poke.
Yeah.
He then kills Susie's mom by driving a car into her. He killed like 25
his
plus
best
vampires.
2 friends. He moves to a new school, gets racially like punched in the face for no reason in the first day, and the 2 friends he makes get murdered that night after leaving his house.
And then
his parents are murdered in front of him.
Exactly. His parents are murdered in front of him. He kills like 2 actual humans, Susie's mom and Straker. He then he stabs Danny in the chest with a stake when Danny's attacking him at the end. He burns like 20 plus vampires. The man was Rambo the whole movie. Like, he was insane.
His line to Danny after he stabs him was hard too. He was like, "I told you I would free you, Danny." I was like, "Fuck yeah."
Fuck yeah.
He was also just bleeding there in that scene. Like, he opens the window and there's just like blood dripping on the ground. And they zoom in on it twice. It meant nothing. That was so dumb.
Dude,
this movie was just
the
really
whole
dumb.
movie was so stupid. Also, dude, you're fighting vampires. Open the fucking shades, man. Like, break.
Yeah, why do they keep going in this Marston House basement too? It's just go in there with a light. That was such a dumb little plot hole we didn't even talk about. Burke and Mark, who are the 2 smartest characters for the most part. Burke's also great in that show, The Outsider. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah.
But
Jason Bateman.
They should have had. That was just crazy that they didn't bring any lights to that spot there. If they just had like flashlights and whatnot, or crosses, why didn't they bring crosses?
Oh,
that
dude,
really
I
dumb.
would have been. I would have had a like Flava Flav giant cross on on my neck the whole time. Like, what are we doing
Yeah.
here?
You should have just made a cross sword.
Oh,
Just
fuck
like
yeah.
swinging around.
Like
and
from
shit.
Game of Thrones, the
That's sick.
flaming sword.
Yeah, Beric Targaryen. I definitely mispronounced his name.
I think you just mashed together like 5 characters' names in that one.
No, Beric Dondarrion.
Okay, there you go.
That was close. So that is going to give us a final score here of a 5.6 here on episode 20 of Ripe Avocados. I've got nothing more to add about this movie. Thank God for Mark Petrie, though, or this would definitely be at the bottom of the barrel. All of our reviews can be found on our website, which will be linked in our bio. And until next time, peace out.
I dream of the places I've been with you. How we sat with the stream flowing by. And then when I kissed you